Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. We are glad to have you with a Prestige Senior Living webinar again this month, and we are excited to share some wonderful information with you. My name is Angie France. I am the Celebrations, Assisted Living, and Expressions Memory Care Product Manager for Prestige Senior Living. Prestige Senior Living represents 43 independent assisted living and memory care communities in the Western United States, as well as 40 plus skilled nursing and rehab centers. We are so happy today to be joined by Mike Studer for this webinar about fall risks for older adults. And Mike is very well known in the industry. He is a physical therapist out of Salem, Oregon, with Northwest Rehabilitation Associates. And Mike received his physical therapy degree from the University of Missouri, Columbia in 1991, as well as his post-professional master's degree with physical therapy with neurologic emphasis from the University of Indianapolis. Mike has a broad background when it comes to physical therapy, but also looking at the benefits of physical therapy and the neurological components when it comes to geriatric physical therapy. He's been part of the Academy for Geriatric Physical Therapy since 2011, with a really strong emphasis on balance, falls, stroke, and the practice of neurology. He has been awarded the 2011 Clinician of the Year by the Academy of the Neurologic Physical Therapy Association. And in 2014, he received that same award from the American Academy of Geriatric Physical Therapy. So Mike has a broad background that he brings to us today. We're excited to have him share ways that you can look at fall prevention, reducing falls, looking at your home environment. Also, the fear of falling, it can play a big part in our roles. We know that millions of people fall every year, and it's one of the largest concerns in our emergency rooms. And we know that as we age, those questions come up at the doctor's office on a regular basis, asking us, when was the last time that you've fallen? And so we see that it's top of mind with so many people today. And we look at, our communities of assisted living and ways that we can reduce falls. We have many opportunities for programs with our Energized Exercise program for physical strength and balance and flexibility. We participate in an exercise program called Ageless Grace. We find very many benefits from keeping our residents active and healthy and enjoying life every day. That is always our goal, is to enjoy life every day and live life better. So I'm going to hand this webinar over to Mike. And Mike, we are so excited to have you with us to share. I know you have lots of great important information and slides that you're going to share with us today. So thank you so much.
Angie, thank you so much for the introduction and for setting the stage of how important this topic is. I'm very pleased to be with all of you here today and thankful for prestigious sponsorship and collaboration in this. So let's really dive into the facts about the matter. Let's talk about worrying about falls, fear of falling, and all those things that Angie did a wonderful job describing that are relevant to the discussion. As Angie mentioned, I'm a doctor of physical therapy. You can see my designations there. At the very end of the presentation, you'll see my contact information if you need to reach out to me for anything further. She did a great job of introducing me. I will spare all of you my biography page here, and we'll move forward into the content that all of you are waiting for. The first opportunity to see my email address and social media contacts are at the bottom of this page. You have those in your handouts, and we'll repeat that later. All right, by the end of the course, I expect that you're going to be able to take a look at, examine, identify the relationship between fear and the distinct expressions in movement. What does it look like when someone's fearful of falling and they haven't even expressed it, because we can detect that by observation. Additionally, I expect that you'll be able to look at the evidence for treating improved fear, reduction of, or mitigation of fear, improved balance, and the other elements that go with that. And we're going to talk about the opportunities that are really in front of us that don't have to mean high technology, leaving a residential facility to access these matters. They're more available and approachable than we might think. So to address the matter, we're going to go through three main divisions of the course. We're going to talk about fear, and we're going to talk about the benefits and attributes of fear that aren't so beneficial. We're going to talk about fitness and preventing falls through looking at conditioning, power training, and reactive and responsive balance training. And then we're going to finally wrap that up by looking at improving self-efficacy, confidence and mobility, and give you some approachable opportunities. Let's start with the concept. Yes.
Yeah, I want to interrupt for just a moment and let folks know that if you do have any questions, you can put those in the chat box or the Q&A, and we will answer those as we can at the end. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Tamara did raise her hand there, and we will catch those as we go on. All right, so let's talk about what is fear first. That's the first thing we promised. The principles of fear that we discuss really are that it is physiologically informative for us. It helps us to be able to avoid danger, learn from past experiences, and it's physiologically based in our minds so that we have different hormones and neurotransmitters that are connected to alert us. Hey, you want to make certain that if that light's turning yellow, start to apply the brakes. Don't go near that cave. Don't eat that berry. Watch out, it's icy outside. So it informs us and helps us to prevent danger in the form of injury or worse the next time. Now, let's take one very important consideration here, that fear can be conditioned. I can learn what is fearful as a child growing up, but fear can also be deconditioned or unconditioned so that I can be comfortable on a surfboard, comfortable without training wheels on my bike, and also comfortable again with my efforts to be able to walk. All right, now let's make certain that we don't conflate fear with anxiety. They're not the same thing. And you can see the 4 bullet points that I've placed for us up there at the top of the page to make certain that we don't think that fear and anxiety are the same thing. Number 1, we are anxious if it dominates our thoughts. We ruminate about this during periods that the fear and the environment or the situation or activity that we are fearful of is something that we think about even when it could not possibly occur. Okay, so if I'm fearful of being incontinent immediately after I've gone to the restroom and completely voided, that would be a problem. If I'm fearful of falling and I'm resting in bed for the night and I don't plan to get up again, that would be, again, starting to move into anxiety. If I'm fearful of getting into a car accident and I have no plans of leaving my home for the next several days, that again becomes anxiety. Anxiety and fear are not the same. It is okay to think about them in a continuum, though. All right, anxiety and fear are very similar in that both have connections, networks that become reinforced in the brain. Here's one of those networks that we think about. And remember, if you have questions about this particular diagram or other things that we don't get to, it's always acceptable to email me and I'll field your email after. This is the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And very simply, this means if I'm fearful of falling, my hypothalamus, a stalk that comes out of the base underneath my brain, releases a hormone that causes another gland nearby, the pituitary gland near the brain, to release a hormone that causes the adrenal glands, which sit on top of my kidneys, to release cortisol, which alarms me, awakens me, does give me those beneficial things of being ready for fight or flight. However, if I'm experiencing that on a chronic basis, it also affects my ability to be able to keep my heart rate low, to be able to change my circulation, to be able to manage blood sugar or even digest food. And finally, too much cortisol for too long a period of time affects my ability to fight off infections. So my immune system is suppressed by cortisol. So there's a problem with having fear for too long chronically. Now, briefly, let's talk about fear neuroscience. Part of the problem is that our brains are very good at remembering problems. We think about that ankle or knee that's a little bit painful. We think about our low back that's been tweaked in the past, and we begin to develop centers of our brain that represent the problematic body part. And those centers of our brain expand so that it becomes very easy to look for and detect fear, pain, anxiety in the future once it's happened to us for a period of time. It becomes conditioned. It becomes easily recognizable. Let's talk briefly about those areas of the nervous system that can represent fear. All right, this figure, when animated, you'll see that this area right here is the main attention centers. It's called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And all you need to remember is it's a big part of the front of the human brain that helps to direct what's important in my world. You see down here in the lower part of the front of the brain and this area right here, we have some areas that help us with specific memory capacity, holding on to fears. And you all know this one right here. That is the hippocampus. And anything that's fearful or pleasant is really stored formidably long-term memory right there. Let's change colors and look to another area. Right over here, this is the cerebellum. And if we've had positive memories, my first airplane flight, first time at Disneyland, but also negative memories, a car accident, our brain remembers episodes of our lives. We call it episodic memories here. All right, now let's change colors again. And let's take a look here. This is the parietal occipital lobe, junction between sensations that come into our brain and things that we see. And those can actually represent fearful memories as well. All right, let's change colors yet again. And let's take a look one more place right here. And that is the extrastriate body area, or portions of the insula, where we actually look at a picture of ourselves. We have an understanding of how our posture is and where we are relative in space right now. We can represent fear in all of these areas. Now, that may seem a little bit dashing or a little bit disappointing and burdensome, but we're going to get to some great solutions. So I've made the case that fear is like an overactive motion detector outside of someone's home, but it's actually looking for all the problems that are occurring potentially in their world, life, or body. So that overactive motion detector looks for pain, dizziness, instability, pressure, tension, tone, incontinence, and all of those things. Once we've experienced it, your brain is very good at finding it again. It's like that motion detector that turns on the light when there's just leaves rustling by on the sidewalk rather than true danger. All right, so I promised to you that we would look at what a person can appear like, how they are moving when fear is burdening them. And here's a couple of really critical signs that you might use for yourself. You might use those to observe loved ones, patients, residents that you're caring for, and you might even talk with your colleagues who don't have the benefit of seeing the webinar here today. So warning signs would be, at the top, walking without looking side to side, short steps, and changes in personality. No, I'd rather not go outside. You go to the party, you go to the grocery store, things that are atypical for an individual. Debilitating signs take it a step further when we see that a person almost freezes, can't move in open ground, needs to have a piece of furniture, an individual, or a wall to be able to continue forward progression. Now they begin to refuse to participate in anything that involves movement, and their fall frequency is likely to increase because fear is encumbering them as a distraction and it's affecting their movement quality. So now we're going to move into something that Angie talked about, fear of falling, and how predominant and actually prevalent it is. There's some statistics up here that might surprise you a little bit. About half of individuals who fall develop a fear of falling. And even in those individuals that have not fallen, if you're over 65, statistics show 25 to 49% of people over 65 have fear of falling. So I'm going to ask you a question. How do we reduce this fear before someone's fallen or after they've fallen once or twice? We're going to come back to that question, though, again in 2 slides. All right, this slide really helps us see the picture and will start to point towards some solutions. If an individual feels unstable, even if they have not experienced a fall, that can lead to them being more alarmed and more avoidant. We call it fear avoidant behavior. They can also become slightly more intolerant of movement. When that happens, the next cycle in this vicious cycle can occur where an individual begins to compensate, reach out, touch things, become dependent on vision and dependent on hands to stabilize themselves. They may actually not want to move without someone within reach or become dependent on an assistive device when they have no other physical reason to do so. And then the individual arrives to the last point in the vicious cycle where they have elevated tone, body is on alert. It's very fatiguing to live like that, and their body is ready for a fall in any direction at any time. This causes very inefficient biomechanics. Again, the short steps causes them to actually seek out opportunities to be stable rather than to be in motion. And then that individual loses conditioning, strength, power, endurance, and so on. Their instability therefore increases, and that completes the cycle. That is the vicious cycle of falls. Now, believe it or not, this is where we'll find the solutions to bring them out. So let's go to that slide that we looked at a moment ago. You'll recognize this is a repeat. However, there's one thing different that I'm going to insert. We're going to revisit this and start to look towards solutions. In frailty, if frailty, self-efficacy, my belief in my ability to improve, fall history, and inactivity are against us, what possible solutions do we have to be able to try to turn this cycle around into a virtuous cycle? So you're seeing some possibilities there of low-hanging fruit so that we can actually begin to reduce fear by reducing frailty and inactivity. I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I'd like to pause just for a second here. If there's any pressing questions that I need to take right away, I'd like to do that. I'm going to look in the Q&A for just a second. Good, we're all good there. And then, all right, so we'll move on. I'm going to leave plenty of time at the end for questions then as well. Thank you for your interest. It looks as though we've got a number of people online, and I'm excited to dialogue with you. Let's learn how to interrupt fear. So, some possibilities, and these are very dysfunctional possibilities, but believe it or not, these are the most common strategies to be able to reduce fear that we see in our worlds today. Forget about it. Don't talk about it. It'll make it worse if you speak of it. Ignore it. Avoid the activity that's fearful, or try to distract me with something else so that I'm not ruminating about fear. Those are very common approaches. We'd like to advance the approach and leverage science. So, as you see in your slides and on the screen, we actually now suggest cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. We talk about it, we face it, we embrace it. We can actually even share our experiences potentially in support groups or communities where the main conversation doesn't have to be about falls or fears of falls, but actually just knowing that you're not the only one experiencing this has proven to be able to give individuals some relief from it. Now, here's where we get into the science of mitigating or reducing fear and improving instability, reducing consequential falls. Believe it or not, we can decondition fear through exposure. I'll talk more about that, but you can imagine now that exposure therapy, I'm fearful of spiders, I'm fearful of heights, I'm fearful of riding in the back seat of a car, small, successful exposures to the phobia or fear that provokes you has proven to be a very healthy direction. Now, again, it can actually be beneficial that individuals experience health, wellness, productivity, wins, and what we call generalized body exercise that isn't even triggering them in upright mobility. So sitting down in a semi-recumbent elliptical machine and exerting yourself can give you a sense that you're more capable and can help you reduce some of the fear. I do see a question up now, and I'm going to catch that right now. Stephanie asks, how can we include fall prevention during our group fitness groups? So there are several things that complement this slide very nicely, Stephanie. Number one is we can actually talk openly in the group about people's fear of falling. In addition, we can actually give people several things to do that directly correspond to their ability to be able to keep their balance just by reconditioning themselves. So in your group exercise classes, you can inform your residents just by saying, we're going to get you stronger. So if you need to catch yourself, protect yourself, get up from a challenging or lower surface, you're going to be more capable and less unstable or instable. So just the notion of getting stronger helps. Just the notion of not getting so depleted, so fatigued, because your endurance is better. So fall risk goes up by 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and more when people have reached the end of their day and their frailty gets to the point that they're at maximum. They don't have enough energy to prevent a fall because of their deconditioning. So, Stephanie, there's point number 3 in your groups. Number 1, talk about it. Number 2, demonstrate that strength makes a difference, even if you're not working on balance exercises. And number 3, in the same vein, endurance exercise reduces fall risk, even if you're not practicing balance exercises. So 3 easy things right there, Stephanie. All right, so the final point at the bottom of this slide, I'll take a moment to talk about, and that's wins. So having an individual see that they're getting stronger, they did more repetitions of sit to stand in 30 seconds measured time than they used to. They created more watts on a seated bike than they used to be able to create. They lifted more weights. They took more steps today. All of those that have numbers assigned can be allocated in the world that we know of as gamification. I see myself getting better by numbers, and that attracts the human brain to then try to see if we can go for better scores, new personal bests, and that can help to alleviate falls by releasing dopamine and serotonin. All right. Now, this slide has a lot of information. You're going to see it one more time. near the end of the presentation today. And I want you to know that when you see it at the end, I'm going to quiz you to see how many of these you can remember. So no stress, no cortisol. You'll see it again, but challenge yourself for a little bit of fun. Generalized exercise, we already talked about. Autonomy, giving the individual the opportunity to choose. Do you want to spend time on the bike? Do you want to do a group exercise class? Do you want some exercises to do in your residence or in your home, in your villa? So giving them autonomy. How difficult is that? Do you want it a little bit harder or a little bit easier? I've already mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy, trigger management, and I already mentioned exposure on here as well. So those actually tend to decrease fear and increase confidence because we feel more comfortable with the previously triggering or threatening situation. Medications is not something that I'll speak to, but it can be a play that other professionals can utilize. We've already talked a lot about education. What is fear? What is balance? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that and understanding the physiology that fear is normal and how to normalize it and function through it is one of the essential critical items. Now, I've already given you also the notion that purpose, music, reward, and earned self-efficacy, I'm getting better. We've already listed those out. We'll take a moment to talk more about those a little bit later. And let's not forget the attribute of fun and the role there. So now that we're starting to move toward these solutions for fear, we understand that exposure, a few steps, making it farther down the hallway without having to touch the wall, habituation and gamification, seeing wins. Then we also see reward cycle replacement, where an individual can begin to associate upright mobility with success or fun. Now, that can include play, and I'm not thinking about fear because I'm stepping in a hopscotch type manner with this group in a competitive, fun, playful, spirited manner. I can be productive and help another collection of residents create a garden out in a free space, and I can feel that I've used my body in a manner that helps other people. That's an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety activity. Promise, seeing myself improve through the group therapy exercises that I've been doing. And finally, personalization. This is the way I'd like to improve my physical activity. All right, I've already talked to you about habituation of fear. There's a little bit more about that here, and there's a lot more to be said, but exposure-based therapy and reward cycle replacement are the two main common things that you could look up on the internet or even task me with. All right, we've also talked about generalized exercise and how does that work? If I were to sit down on a recumbent bike, I could actually reduce my fear? Yes, because we reduce cortisol and we increase endorphins. We increase the natural hormones of antidepressant nature, dopamine and serotonin, by choosing to do something that is healthy and filled with wellness. We can gamify and be excited that we had more pedals per minute, more steps, more watts, more calories than usual. All right. In addition, we can actually reduce the fear of instability through these 4 main trajectories, and evidence helps us see that every single year that goes by, more research is being done by this and on this very topic. The 4 main concepts: generalized exercise, strength training works equally as well as aerobic, Tai Chi is equally but not superior to those, walking, water-based training, because we call that a splash don't crash environment, no chance of actually falling, and all of those are more effective when coupled with cognitive behavioral therapy. The body-based interventions that really kind of speak to Stephanie's question a few minutes ago, that can be used to decrease fear, anything that improves your fitness, if I'm doing balance activities that even I feel, based on autonomy, are well developed for me, well targeted within my range and comfort for how hard I want to work and how hard I want to be challenged for balance. Balance training can work. Consistency is always better than intensity in these matters. Rather than scaring me with very challenging exercises that I'm just barely comfortable, it's actually better to do 5 to 7 days per week of comfortable. Meaning, stand and brush your teeth and put your feet together. Make it really approachable. We do that called habit stacking, something you were already going to do in life, and you can add on a balance exercise with that, keeping in mind that that also complements convenience, engagement. It's available for me right there. All right, so now let's move into some practical fitness interventions before we circle back to summarize and get to your questions. All right, let's dive into this. There's some good opportunities that are not all equipment-based or skilled therapy-based. Let's look at that list. So you can do repetitions of sitting to standing, and we can give it the notion of what we call an exercise snack, which means, Mrs. Jones, when you get up from the couch after you've watched The Price is Right, which I know you like to do at 10 o'clock, when you stand up, rather than standing up once, would you be open to standing up and sitting back down and doing a total of 5 of those? That's a great way to just basically reach over to a bowl called exercise and grab a handful of health. We call it an exercise snack. That's also viable and available when we look at seated or standing resistance work. Somebody could be sitting and watching the television with a band around their ankles, and they're kicking their legs back and forth. They're pulling the band with their arms. They're pulling it in different directions. Hand grip strength is indicative of longevity, health, and there's a reason, because strength training helps to improve our immune system, helps to improve our brains, helps us functionally when we are in a moment of crisis and we need a strong arm to place out. So many reasons. And that's why we talk about that hand and arm strength being predictive. And then remember, we can always leverage the equipment that's down in an exercise gym, and we can give an individual an opportunity to take a baseline measurement, gamify, see themselves improve, and then let them choose the activity that feels healthiest to them. In aerobic or endurance-based options for fall prevention, we see that walking intervals are actually superior to slow, long duration walks. So having an individual try to increase their pace slightly when they walk from their room to a neighbor's room, and then they take 3 rooms in a row where they're walking easily, then they go another passageway of walking rapidly. We do intervals of higher speed walking, is more superior than a slow 1 mile per day walk. Seated or standing marching intervals lend themselves very nicely to aerobics. And then finally, you don't have to use a machine with resistance settings elevated. You can always use those gamifying toward revolutions per minute, steps per minute, and keep it at low resistance for aerobics. There's a lot of opportunities to gamify if we just start to take measurements and let someone see the gains that are to be had. All right, there's also some mind-based interventions that should be mentioned. I'll catch this slide, and then I'm going to go down and capture a few questions as well. So the social cohesiveness of just seeing other people like me improve or have fun or use their bodies in health, that can be very antidepressant and also engaging. When I see myself improving, and please, if you don't understand gamification completely, feel free to ask during this session or email me. And then recall that small successes rather than big threats and a surprising win, small successes consistently are more beneficial. All right, I'm going to let all of you see this page of generalized movement or physical activity, because remember, we don't always engage someone by using the term exercise. Sometimes that can be a little bit affrontive to people. While you're looking at this slide, I'm going to go down and capture a couple of questions. Kevin asks, how do you teach someone using a walker to walk more upright and with the walker and not leaning too far forward? So, Kevin, that's a great question. I'm actually involved with a piece of equipment and I have no financial involvement that is revolutionizing that consideration. I don't want to endorse any products. If you want to email me, I can connect you to them. And again, I have no financial disclosure and no engagement, but I'm very intrigued by what this company is doing. If you don't have that product, which I understand is very inexpensive, there's a lot of other ways to get this done. One way is to give the individual some cues of what it looks like, maybe even a photo or a video, and then don't give them any cues and ask them to evaluate themselves. If they don't have the cognitive ability to evaluate themselves, then we can also do a couple of other things regarding step length, and I can guide you through that nicely, but I've given you two strategies there, and I can give you a more lengthy answer later. Okay, Megan, I've noted residents will start looking at their feet when they're fearful of falling. That actually can be related to Kevin's question because that can induce the very type of postures that we're talking about. When they're cued to look up, stand tall, and dance with us or give us a hug, they don't look at their feet as often and trust bonding occurs. Megan, that's a very astute observation, and we actually call that external focus. So rather than calling out someone's posture and having them think about their body, that's called internal focus, having them stand as though they're the tallest version of themselves, or they're supposed to stand as though they're supposed to do a proper dance, ballroom dance with us. That's external focus, where I'm not thinking about the posture, I'm thinking about how the movement should look. So that's a great question, and that's well-based in evidence. Stephen asks, is there a source to learn more about how to incorporate more CBT concepts into our fall prevention activities? And Stephen, I can get you some resources for that. There's some great educational tools that are available. I can't give you those off the top of my head, but I'm happy to field an email from you on that. So let's mark those three questions. Great. And then we'll continue on. Great. Thank you, Kevin. And Adela asks, I only have 1 hour a week to accomplish all goals. Also, I don't find competition helpful. Oh, I love this. All right. So if gamification is not a way to be able to motivate you, and you have 1 hour per week, I would ask you if you would be willing to actually spread that 60 minutes across 7 different days and actually just do basically about 9 minutes of higher intensity intervals per day. If that's all you could do is give me 1 hour a week, I'm asking for 9 minutes per day, once a day, every day. That's 63 minutes if you're talking about an hour per week. And I could structure intervals, walk slow, walk fast, walk slow, walk fast, sit to stand fast, sit to stand slow, into out of bed, into out of bed, into out of bed. You could do what's called a task specific circuit training, and in less than 9 minutes per day, get total body exercise that is beneficial for you cognitively, physically, and functionally. So Adela, I hope that I've packaged a short answer into the short amount of time you have for that as well. All right, and I'm happy to receive an email from you as well. Let's move forward. You've all had a chance to see what generalized movement does. You saw this slide. let's dive a little bit more into this concept of move with music. When I get to choose the music, I get to choose how my body moves, then I get dopamine associated with my enjoyment. And now, rather than body movement being associated with fear, it's now becoming associated with pleasure. And that's one way to debunk that neurons that fire together wire together, meaning when I move, it automatically provokes fear. Nope, not when you've had music interrupt that. So we have a menu of opportunities: doing things socially together, being productive, caregiving for other individuals, being fun and playful. All of those give us opportunities to interrupt fear. But remember, nothing will be more superior than what an individual directs. This is my best way out of the options you've given me to lead out of fear. So it can include personalized options like, I prefer to do my movement outdoors, recreating, being productive, helping other people, moving like the group is moving, social cohesion, perhaps again with music, or having some autonomy as to how difficult the movement should be by exertion, by imbalance, or otherwise. So not everybody needs to get their fitness improved in a gym. They might do it recreationally, pickleball or otherwise. They might do it outdoors in a group. So again, let's come back then to that menu of opportunities. I'm thinking that you have had about 6 minutes of time since I first presented that. So be thinking this slide is something that you were going to try to commit to memory. I'm going to start to populate those up. Just challenge yourself and see how many you remember. Autonomy, cognitive behavioral therapy, medications, education, exposure-based therapy, purpose, reward, earned self-efficacy, music, and fun. And I hope that you feel like you got several of those committed to your memory. So as we begin to wrap up, there's a lot of evidence in this fear to instability, to frailty connection that's very similar to that vicious cycle. Here's my good friend and author, Dr. Merrill Landers, who's the chair of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. His article in 2021 established that connection for persons with Parkinson's disease, and we now use that across aging as well. Remember, as we summarize here today, we've learned how to limit fear's influence, small wins, gamify for people that like to gamify, personalize the challenge, the error frequency, the difficulty, the exertion, provide autonomy. What direction of these solutions would you like to choose for yourself? Enhance self-efficacy by taking a measure and letting someone's actions give them the clear impression that they've gotten better rather than just my praise. Okay? And now remember, we talked about this earlier, fear as a vicious cycle. We've now learned how to interrupt that with giving individuals success that can be gamified, successful experiences. They can be successful outdoors, in social context, in group, in one-on-one therapy, or just seeing that I'm doing better than I was measurably doing before. All right, that helps us to be able to put into the frame that reducing fear also reduces something that we didn't talk about yet. Fear is a distractor that can influence our ability to move negatively. We don't want to be constantly thinking about falls. So it's natural that all of us would avoid something that causes us fear. That's called loss aversion. However, not talking about that does no one any good. So we want to talk about the fact that it's natural, it's not dysfunctional, it's something that a lot of people experience, and there are strategies to beat this. we can give individuals the opportunity to succeed and play and again, overcome through mitigation. So, recapping what we talked about, we said staying well includes there are going to be days that are very difficult and you feel encumbered by the fear. We don't want to catastrophize and we want to try to build a streak of how many days you've gotten out of your room or taken 4,000 steps. We want to give people small wins over pain, over incontinence if they're fearful of that, over imbalance. You've gone 7 days in a row without enduring a fall. If you have a fall, let's start a brand new streak. We give individuals the opportunity to improve their self-efficacy only if we take measurements and we give them autonomy and adopt wellness strategies. I'll pause the presentation here by giving you my contact information. I want to recognize that I've also given you a lot of bonus slides that I knew that we wouldn't get to, but I wanted to make certain that you had a very valuable experience. So as you go through the bonus slides, feel free to email me if any of those call a matter into question or you need further clarification. We have 2 questions right now sitting in the Q&A box, which I'll address. And I'll also open it up for the rest of your questions for our final 15 minutes or so here. All right, Adela. Okay. Adela says, I'm sorry, to clarify, I only have an hour with my residents in my class. No problem, Adela. So then I would change my response to tell you that we would divide that hour up into strength training somewhere toward the backside. You don't want to fatigue them early. Endurance training as a nice, easy warm-up. Probably move into a little bit of balance training right after that. And then let's give them an opportunity to have fun, be that music or a game that involves music, so we're not putting high pressure on it. Then we move into the strength. We bring back with a little bit of endurance. We have a moment to recover from the endurance where we're discussing what we learned today or how we're getting better. And then we finish up with a cool down. If I had an hour, that's how I would structure it. If you want me to email that to you, just contact me and I'll bounce that right back to you. Stephen says, knee osteoarthritis is a problem for many of my residents. Do you have some movement ideas when knee flexion is painful? Stephen, that's a great question. One of the most difficult things with osteoarthritis leading to pain at the knees is standing up from a low surface. And one of the easiest things to do is give people an opportunity to get their legs stronger in a manner that doesn't provoke the knee pain. So I have individuals try to work on sit to stands, functional activity, strength basis from a high surface so that the knee is not heavily bent. So we go to the high bed that they've got in their side room. We go to the armrest of their couch and they sit to stand from the armrest off the side of the couch or the back of the couch, depending on what their abilities are. If they don't have those, we can actually do that by building up a chair in their home with a couple of pillows. So we want to do repetitions that strengthen, but not provoke. Kevin says, my wife's going to start physical therapy to help with her gait and walking. Anything that would help improve her walking and try to wean from using a walker. So again, I don't know her condition. We can't take this as medical advice, but I'll give you a couple of things. We'll do 3. Number 1, take a measurement of her 2-minute walking test. She covers 115 feet of walking in 2 minutes. Do that in physical therapy. They're likely to do that. So we want to start with a measurement like that, a measurement of balance and maybe a measurement of strength. How many times can she stand up and sit down from a chair in your home in 30 seconds? So we start with measures, a strength measure, an endurance measure, and a balance measure. Then part of the way into therapy, we take those measures over again to see if the therapy has accountability, she's getting better. If you want to wean away from using a walker, a couple of strategies exist. Walk a couple of steps at a time with both hands on the walker. Then just with one hand on the walker is a nice strategy. Again, without knowing her medical condition, I couldn't advise if that's safe for her or not, but those are some thoughts. All right, we come back to Adela. Great, I'll expect an email from you. And it looks as though right now we've got questions cleared up, but I want to give all of you the opportunity, plenty of time still, to ask me more questions. And maybe even Angie has some points that she would like to raise as well. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm happy to open it up for anyone. We've got about 9 minutes left.
Thanks so much, Mike. What a wealth of information you've shared with us. I particularly like what you had to say about those movement snacks.
Oh, yeah.
That it doesn't have to be something that is, that you look, and dread at, but just making it simple and adding those in, like during those commercials, during a TV show or whatever. I think that is such a vital part of a way to start. And I appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I've got many more movement snacks and considerations of that to talk about. If we happen to have another webinar, we'll talk about that as well.
Great.
All right, what other questions do you all have out there? Hopefully you feel that I've delivered to you a lot of very actionable techniques and information, and that you gain value during this hour of your valuable time. Sean, is there an at-home app or any other movement program you could recommend? There are many. As a matter of fact, wearables just tracking how many steps, calories, flights of stairs, etc. There's many wearable products. There's a few other products available to be able to play a game with yourself, with your movement. I don't want to endorse any, but some of them will offer some distractions and cognitive motor interference. Those are available as well. Probably without endorsing a product, Sean, I should receive an email from you and answer you then directly, because I'm very careful to make an educational session just that and not a marketing session.
Thanks for that, Mike.
Yes, thank you.
And I will say many of our communities have wellness coaches at Prestige, and they do perform our energized exercise classes, as well as you talked about music. We have our Ageless Grace classes that are seated with movement that is safe and kind of outside the box movement for the body that's done to music. And we try to highlight those in our presentations. But, we have a lot of people who are joining us that are team members who do host classes, but we have many people joining us who are outside and more in their home environments, like Kevin. And so any other aspects as far as home environment that you would recommend for those that are joining us? We like to be the solvers of problems, or be the ones who give information to support everyone. And so if you could maybe address something for the home.
Yeah, let's take one moment to elaborate on that notion that I called task-specific circuit training. So imagine if you were to take the functional activities of your life and put them back to back to back to back in a very short package of exercise, meaning I'm going to do 5 repetitions of laying down in bed, sitting up, standing up, sitting back down, lying back down, 5 repetitions of that movement. Then I'm going to walk into my, let's say, living area, and I'm going to stand next to my kitchen sink or in a corner where I can be held safely. And I'm going to try, when I'm surrounded by opportunities to be able to contact something with my hands if I needed to, I'm going to try to stand in whatever position I can tolerate with my eyes closed for a couple of moments. So that is stand with feet apart. Next stage would be, if you can handle that, you go feet together. Next stage is feet staggered. That's called stage 2 balance. If you can handle that, you go stage 3, feet lined up. And if you can handle that, you do it on 1 foot, stage 4. So we start with stage 0, 1, and then 2, 3, or 4. And that would be the next part. Then I go to a high surface in my home and I do 5 repetitions of stand up, sit down as fast as I can. Then I go into the hallway of my home or residence area, and I try to do interval walks. 10 feet walk fast, 20 feet walk slow. 10 feet walk fast, 20 feet walk slow, turn around, and then start coming back to my door. If you only have it in your home, then you can do a lap fast of your 20-foot hallway, 2 laps slow, or a length fast, and you can do it that way as well. There's a lot of other opportunities, but that is a task-specific circuit training approach. I think we've got a couple things in Q&A. Let's see what we've got. Sean, thank you. Kima, hopefully I've pronounced your name correctly. Thank you. Shirley, is this video available online? And I'll let Angie answer that.
Thank you. We are going to be sending this video out to those who registered, as well as our team members. We'll send the recording of it, as well as Mike's slides that he provided for us that you've seen today. And there are lots of extra ones in there, as you mentioned earlier, Mike. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, if I don't see any further questions, I'll invite all of you to follow me on Instagram, where I do post regularly. You can also go to my website, mikestuder.com. There's nothing for sale at all, anywhere, no subscriptions. And if you just want to get ideas, you'll actually be able to see a lot that I frequently post there. I do want to take a moment to thank Angie and the exemplary staff at Prestige. You guys have done a great job producing this, organizing it, and if we've done a great job, I'll look forward to coming back to see all of you again.
That's great, Mike. Thank you so much. And once again, if you do have any questions or information, you can email Mike. You can also visit us at prestigecare.com. We have blogs out there. There's a blog that we've done with Mike prior to this presentation. We also have lots of information about upcoming webinars and events in our communities. You can go on the locations tab and find out about communities in your area. Maybe go visit and attend one of our Energize exercise classes or an Ageless Grace class. We invite you to come in and enjoy those. It's kind of nice to come into a setting if you're an older adult who maybe is uncertain about going to a gym, and we can provide you with a space to enjoy some of that with us. But we love all things activities and life engagement when it's centered around enjoying life and making life better. And so, Mike, thank you again so much. We're grateful to have had you, and we look forward to seeing you in the future and for all of the resources that you've provided to us through this. Everyone, thanks so much. I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy spring. Hopefully it's coming to your area soon. And we thank you again for being with us. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Take care all.